Yo, y'all, welcome back to Speedbug channel. I bet y'all didn't think I would do this video because y'all know I love Suzuki so much, and you didn't think that as much as I rag and pick on those Ducatis about how much of a piece of shit they are, that because I have such a love for Suzuki, that I wouldn't have the nerve to talk shit about probably my most favorite bike, maybe right on par with, with the BMW of all the bikes I own. Well, you're wrong, because I'll talk shit about anything. Because if it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. We're gonna praise it. But nothing's perfect, and if everything was perfect, then the world would just be so boring, and everything else would just be boring with it. You wouldn't know the difference from good or great. But as good as this bike is, it still has some flaws. As you've probably watched many reviews on this bike, not necessarily on my channel, about this bike actually being on the track and stuff like that. Suzukis are all kind of always known to not have the best brakes in the category. So I think that these brakes are more than adequate. Even on the track, and I've slammed on them at about 180, 190 miles an hour. No brake is going to stop you, obviously, instantaneous at that speed, but there are bikes that I have ridden that are better than this as far as the braking system. But that's not the first gripe or anything like that. But let's talk about the first thing that I actually dislike about this bike so much. And I noticed it more so on this one than my other old ones, meaning my Hayabusa and my K1s, K3s, K5s, K7s, all the other ones, in the past. So the number one, and it was kind of a lot on this bike, and I thought it was weird, but it's definitely gone away, obviously, with the aftermarket exhaust, and that is the excessive vibration that you kind of get, like the zinging feeling in the handlebars. Now, other people have kind of reported on that on the racetrack, and definitely in the higher RPM, but it was a lot and much more significant when I had the stock exhaust with the cat and the muffler and everything else and the flapper valves inside. Since then, I've upgraded to obviously more of a performance and free-flowing exhaust. It allows the bike to obviously exhale and breathe a little bit easier. The feeling, it's still there, but nowhere near what it was before. And I would say it's probably on par with every other motorcycle now that I have. But because I knew it was there obviously before, so I kind of still look for it mentally in my head, so I can still feel it. But when your bike is stock, and meaning this bike is stock, and you're going to ride it home from the dealer or anything like that, because the first thing you're going to do is obviously change the can, because you guys remember in my previous videos, the stock exhaust and the cans on this thing is freaking ridiculous. But Suzuki must have put that shit on there knowing how ridiculous it's going to be, just to purposely make you change it. Because that has got to be the ugliest factory exhaust I've ever seen in my whole life. So that's definitely going to be the first and probably the biggest gripe that I actually hate about this motorcycle. The second thing that I really hate about this motorcycle, or not hate, it's kind of just a gripe, is that for some reason or another, and I thought I could really tune it out and fix a lot of it, but I've noticed also with a lot of other friends that have 17s and even the 18s, because this is a 17, is that the idle just down low, it's like almost like Suzuki didn't finish the map. And my tuner, obviously Paul at Blaze Cycle, he corrected it obviously as best as he can, but it's obviously still not perfect like the Yamaha or some of the Suzukis or hence the BMW. But it likes to surge a lot, and it obviously when you flash a bike or do a power commando, you're gonna get that surge and stuff like that, but it definitely surges more than a factory bike. It's smoother than it was when it was factory, but it kind of sucks when you like let off the gas and you're creeping in first gear and you're just letting the bike, idle in first gear, and you're just kind of going through. It tries to like surge a lot, and it's obviously going to catch and retract on the chain slack, and it causes the bike to to jerk back and forth. So it kind of makes it a little bit unpleasant. So you kind of have to ride the clutch a little bit. So when I was looking at a couple other friends' bikes, when their bike had stock exhaust, no flash or anything like that, the way it rolled out from the dealer, because I didn't really have mine stock for very long, pretty much just the way I rode it home, theirs surged as well. So it was kind of disappointing, but because I never had that in any of my other bikes that were Suzuki's, and even the Gsxr 600 that you've also seen here on the channel, that bike doesn't do it. So it's definitely obviously something new with this bike, or maybe it has something to do with the VVT or something like that. I'm not sure, but there's other things that make up for it that like this bike has that other ones don't have, such as VVT, where it's like instant, on-demand, always torque. So you're always in the power band, and you can literally ride around on this thing in like 4th or 5th gear, or even 6th gear, and have more than enough to do anything that you need around the street. And that's saying a lot coming from me, because I'm someone that always loves to do jackrabbit starts and just feel that power of torque, you know, in your wrist. So yeah, the idle, I don't know what it's going on, but it's significantly better, and it's just how the bike is. I've noticed it. It's just how the bike is. When the bike is factory, and like I said, another friend of mine had one that was factory, and I think it had like 200 miles or 300 miles or something on it, and his was doing the same thing. And then I saw his, the way it was factory, and compared it to mine, and since mine was flash and stuff like that, it was smoothed out obviously a little bit, but it's still there. So I don't know what it is, Suzuki, if you watch my videos or stuff like that, but I love your bikes. I will probably always be a Suzuki buyer for the rest of my life, but fix the damn idle. Hopefully you'll be fixing it in 19, or maybe with a software update for your 19s. Third thing, again, it's not really a thing that I hate or anything. It's more of just a gripe because of what I was used to with kind of the older Suzukis, but given the geometry and the aerodynamics and of course of the bike, smaller, narrower, thinner, better aerodynamic, less weight. I have no trunk space in this bike, and even if my exhaust servo is out, my old Suzukis, I feel like I could go grocery shopping with the back and the trunk of those things. And of course they are obviously much bigger and heavier and stuff, but if you look at the back of this bike, it's obviously not like that. So I was really actually hoping and looking forward to that, as opposed to some of the other bikes that I have where they absolutely have no trunk space, or the worst is the V4 where the cap comes off and that's pretty much it. So, and this is really, you know, pushing it close, but again, there's not much space to really put back there when the actual fairing itself is just small on its own. So, oh well, but that's not the biggest thing, but we'll live with that one. The fourth thing, that's gonna have to be, and it's only a little bit, I'm not so harped on it, but as I start to look at some of my other bikes that, not even that are necessarily newer, but I kind of expected a little bit more out of this bike, which kind of was the display. Now I really obviously like the illuminated Gsxr logo that's below it. That's fantastic. It adds a nice little touch. And I see that it is obviously an LCD screen, but it is. But it's a huge screen. I think they should have put like a TFT screen or something like that, something with color. It kind of sometimes reminds people of like an old Game Boy. It's not the worst. It may be better than some of the analog gauges that some people like or dislike. It doesn't bother me, but when you start to look at like the Yamahas and the Ducatis and stuff like that, and even some of the CBRs where they're all kind of like color displays, and then it's like the Suzuki gauge really starts to like show its age. So hopefully that will also be another update coming in the next couple, maybe the next year or two, but at the same time, I'll be first to admit it and stuff like that. Suzuki is kind of like GM. They'll just keep making the same shit over and over for years and years, as they did before this bike did come out. It was like the same Gsxr for 10 years, and then they're like, oh shit, maybe we actually kind of do need to make a new bike. Well, yeah, if you want to compete with some of the other people, absolutely. So, and the fifth thing overall that I dislike about this bike, of course, because I love Suzuki so much, is that I had to pay for it. Because to be honest with you, as an overall whole, I really do like this bike from day in and day out, day one. Some people don't like the riding position, maybe gives them a false sense of security and stuff like that, but for me, it works for me. Now, what works for me may not work for you. You know, maybe you like the Hondas, maybe you like the Ninjas or the Ducatis or whatever else that it may be. But for me, this bike feels at home, and I kind of said that in some of my other videos, where when you sit on something, or whether you're going bike shopping or car shopping, whatever it may be, when you sit in it and you put your ass on that seat and you grab the handlebars or the steering wheel, you'd be like, this is the one. Before you even started, this is the one. And that's how I felt the first time when I got on a Suzuki, because actually that wasn't even the first bike that I was ever on. The first bike I was ever on was actually a Ninja. But I knew this bike was home, and I just liked the way Suzuki kind of laid their bikes out and did things like that. To be honest with you, I like the way this bike still feels even more than my BMW, even though I know the BMW is still a better bike. But that's just me. I don't mind the brakes. Occasionally I do go to the track and stuff like that and race it, and or race it on closed courses and stuff like that. But however, this bike still feels great for me. There's some things, again, like, you know, like the handlebar buzzings and things like that that I didn't really necessarily care for. But, you know, again, no bike is perfect. This is not a $30,000, $40,000 bike. This is a $15,000 bike. And if you want something that's going to be pretty much perfect, well, the all-around best perfect bike, as I've made many videos about that before, is the BMW. And I'll tell you, hands down, absolutely it is. But it's double the cost of this bike. So you kind of have to weigh in your odds on what you feel is actually going to be the best for you. But for me, 5 things that, you know, that I really dislike about this bike, and to be honest with you, after riding it, and out of all of the bikes that I've had in my stable that you guys watch, this is definitely the one I've actually been riding the most, commuting back and forth to work with it, going racing with it, just going out riding and playing with it, and I just like it. There's not too many things that I really dislike about it. And even though I got the new R1 and the V4 and the BMW and stuff, yes, I still ride them, but this is like my go-to bike, and I love it so much. So, and a lot of other people that have ridden it will say obviously the same thing, unless you just don't like Suzuki, and that's okay. So, but if you haven't ridden one, I definitely recommend go check it out. The VVT is awesome. The power band is awesome. It has got like as much torque as like a Busa, and it's like 200 pounds lighter and makes the same, if not more, horsepower. So it's everything that the Gsxr needed to obviously keep up with some of the newer bikes. But don't hold your breath, you know, because you have the new Ducatis coming out, the new BMWs coming out. I'm sure, Aprilia's coming out with their new bike and stuff like that. So again, you know, it's who's going to be in front that day, who's better on this day today. And today, you know, I think, and when I bought this bike, Suzuki got my heart again for this day. But if there's anything else I missed, or you have any other questions about maybe what you liked and what you didn't like, you know, definitely drop it in the comments in the line below. I'll be happy to answer, guess, question, you know, whatever it is that you want to know about the bike, and we'll go from there. But that's going to wrap it up here for today's video about 5 things I dislike about my Gsxr. And yes, there are a few things it's not perfect. So, and I don't even have a Suzuki shirt on today. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you guys like what you saw, Facebook, Instagram at Speedbug, same name here as YouTube. And we'll catch you all for another episode again on the Speedbug channel. Deuces.